Okay.
Everybody rolling in?
Okay.
Okay.
Ready. Senator, what is your reaction to the way Cambodia was handled?
Well, I think it was a precipitate action on our part and an unnecessary use of violence in a situation in which we could have negotiated a result without endangering the lives of the crewmen, killing some of our own soldiers, and sending several hundred Marines into Thailand without the consent of that government and bombing the airport in Cambodia. I think negotiations are the way to settle these kind of incidences, which aren't uncommon around the world.
But it worked, Senator.
Well, did it work? If that's the case, why don't we bomb the coast of South America every time they pick up a fishing ship? They go out 150 miles into international waters, and I don't think you can say that something works when it was used violence unnecessarily. As a matter of fact, in the course of the military operation, our government monitored a public statement from Cambodia offering to return the ship. So I think our act was unnecessary and unfortunate, and those very popular with almost unanimous support here in the Congress and perhaps so around the country. I think we'll regret that we used violence where violence wasn't necessary.
Senator, why was there almost unanimous support in Congress?
Well, I don't know. I think it's always popular to for a government to respond to insults and attacks upon honor and dignity in a violent and quick way. It somehow or another satisfies people, but I don't think it's the appropriate way to respond in a world such as ours and on the part of a superpower such as we are to this kind of a minor incident.
There's been surprisingly little criticism of the President's action from Democrats or liberals or war critics. Why is that true, do you think?
Well, maybe they agree with it. I don't know, but or maybe the members of Congress think it's popular. They all thought it was popular to vote for the funds to start the war in Vietnam, so they voted the funds and made a tragic mistake there. And maybe that's the response they're making now, response to what they think their constituents believe is a popular response. Maybe they believe that this is the way that a superpower has to prove its virility and its credibility, but I think it's more a sign of weakness than strength to respond in this way to an incident that was relatively minor.
Senator, what's your attitude towards Vietnam aid assistance to refugees?
Oh, I think that we, having participated in that tragic event and having had the support of all kinds of people there whose lives would be endangered if they left behind, that we have no alternative except to give assistance to the refugees, despite the fact that I voted against going into that war in the first place. But we helped create the tragedy. It would have been over at least 10 years ago and longer by free elections if we had allowed the elections to proceed. And since we created part of the problem, I don't see how we can in any way avoid part of the responsibility, tragic as that may be.
Senator, suppose you were convinced that there was a great danger that the Cambodians would take that ship to the mainland and there transship the Americans into Cambodia, and suppose you feared that if that happened you couldn't get them back. Would it then have been reasonable to attack the PT boats or whatever the Cambodians had there?
Well, I guess you can make suppositions on which one might have to decide that some other action was necessary, but we weren't even in contact with the government. There was no reason to believe that we couldn't secure return of the ship by negotiations. Other ships have been stopped going through there too. We didn't settle the question of whether or not we were in contested waters. They assert a claim to the waters around that island. Were we within the 12 miles of the island? It just seems to me that it doesn't make any sense to respond with violence within 50, 60 hours of an incident such as this out in the ocean.
Senator, looking beyond the specific incident, do you see any further ramifications, any effect on foreign policy? Is this why you're concerned?
Well, I'm concerned about the question of the merits. I think that this could have been negotiated and settled without losing some lives and without all the violence. Furthermore, I think it represents an attitude on the part of our government in terms of dealing with foreign incidents that is not in the best interest, does not serve the best interests of this country.
Senator, a number of members of Congress
Senator, did you completely support what the president did in the Cambodian incident?
I don't think we had any choice because the sketchy information that was available, the circumstances surrounding the incident, I don't think it was a matter of being able to support or not support until we actually knew what the facts were.
And now that you know what the facts are?
I would have only two comments. One, I think the president probably acted in good faith under the circumstances. It was a very difficult judgment. I suppose we could say the results have been a good result, therefore perhaps the efforts were justified. I would say as far as saving lives, yes, of an American merchant marine. But I would caution about the idea of using the concept that the ends justify the means, or that we can somehow be successful because we were successful on this score, that we can go around the world with this kind of basic foreign policy to impose or to intervene at will. I think in this case we were on the high seas when this action took place. It was an act of piracy, and the response was based upon Thomas Jefferson's earliest of responses of this type in the North African pirate case. So I think the president acted in good order.
What about do you expect that what he did will be politically popular throughout the country? And is there any danger in reading those political results too closely?
I think we're all subject to political rising and falling of popularity polls, but I think that's going to be overwhelming in support of the president. I think the general public will see this as a decisive act, one which took action when the public feels that perhaps we have been negligent to take action in the past. And in light of the defeat in Southeast Asia of a bankrupt policy that finally came to a blessed end, I think will find the overwhelming support of the public will be behind the president.
What about on Capitol Hill, Senator? There were a lot of people going around here yesterday saying they just didn't know what was going on. The White House hadn't involved them, and it seemed like we were in another instance of unilateral action without involving the Congress. Can you go along with that?
No, I cannot, because I think we have established very clearly, both under precedent and under the Constitution, under the War Powers of the President Act, that under clear and imminent danger, the President is empowered to act. He must make a report. Now, those are circumstances that do not lead us indeterminably into war over a long period of time, but these are emergency actions. These are crises problems, and I think it's very clear the President acted within his legal constitutional rights.
Senator, you've